Hi everyone, I'm Tom, and welcome to my top 10 solo games. It's been a while since I've done a top 10. I usually make playthroughs of games. You can see playthroughs for probably a lot of these that I'm about to mention on this channel. They can't all come up in the corner though, I'm only allowed to do 4 of those. Thanks YouTube. But yes, there'll be links in the description, I'm sure, for, if you'd like to know more about these games. I'll try and have some clips running as well while I'm talking about those ones that I have filmed, so you can get an idea of how it all looks when it's out on the table. And I'm sure you know already, but just in case, this is just my personal list. I haven't gone off, popularity or star rating or number of times it's mentioned or anything. Just feel like, what would I, just given the chance right now, what would I play solo the most? And when I played solo games much more, I still play them now, not as much. I tend to be filming games, which you could maybe think of as solo play, but yeah, a lot of that time is now spent filming them. But yeah, and that's part of the ranking as well. And when I was really playing a load of solo games, what really spoke to me, and part of that is, a lot of solo games. I tend to go for Euro games. Don't have any negative interaction in them, or very little, or it can be avoided somehow. I've lost my train of thought there. Yeah, they tend to be Euro simulations. I quite like the complex ones, although there's quite a lot of filler games ended up on the list as well. But yeah, I don't know where I'm going with this. Let's start with the list, shall we? Not yet, though. This is thanks to Patreon. My patrons, patreon.com/slickerdrips. I'm only able to keep making videos thanks to the patrons, and every month a top 10 gets voted for. They've been delayed. December is going to be the month of top 10s, though. Mark this spot. Mark that word. So, honourable mentions before we get started. It'd be great if you wanted to be a patron. I'm going to do these two conversations concurrently. It's not going to be confusing. If you want to go there, it'll be linked in the description. It'll be amazing. Thank you. So, honourable mentions that didn't quite make it onto the list, but I still think are worth mentioning. Gaia Project. Ultima Factory is a company, a collection of people. A company, let's say, that work exclusively on solo modes, often for Stonemaier games. They did Viticulture, Wingspan, the Euphoria expansion, which now includes a solo mode for it, Scythe, Tapestry, almost all of them. I think maybe all of them now. They've gone back and plugged one into Euphoria. Anyway, they started working on other games as well, and recommend those solo games, those solo modes as well. The Euphoria one probably works most similarly to this, but Gaia Project I think is the best one so far. And it is a great big sprawling. It's a spin-off of Terra Mystica, or a spiritual successor, however you want to put it. It's this great big complex game where we are terraforming planets, roaming through space, trying to take control of them, going up all sorts of crazy tracks. And the solo AI. That's kind of, I think that's a point I half made in the intro that I meant to, a lot of solo games end up with these, just beat your own score thing, which is fine, but, it's just play the game as it is, maybe tighten things up a little bit since you're just on your own, but beat your own score. And it's more, a sandbox, more a practice mode than it feels like you are playing something. And, that's great. Sometimes, you haven't got the players and you still want to play the game. It's great that it can be played solo. But the ones that I love the most are when you have, something more to compete with, or you are not just trying to meet a score threshold, you are trying to fulfill certain scenarios. This definitely fits in that competing with an AI. You draw 2 cards and slot them together, and the way that they work together determines what the AI is going to do. They did that again in Euphoria, and it works beautifully there. But yeah, I think maybe down to the complexity of the game, and it's a game that's, ultimately, my gaming partner, Rach, did not get on with Gaia Project. That's why we haven't actually got it anymore, but I still would put that up at the top of Ultima Factory's many achievements. Other ones, OctoDice is an amazing roll and write game. It's the best roll and write game still. And the solo game of that, it's in OctoDice, you get to use other people's dice rolls to fill in some spaces on your sheet. In between your turns, you get a couple of opportunities to do that. There's just, instead of having other players, you just roll some extra dice every few turns instead to simulate that. But OctoDice is it's partly because I love it so much, but I like you've got this little grid of tech tiles that, depending on their positioning, and they're all double-sided, so depending on their orientation, it makes for quite a different game every time as well. And the other one is Subdivision, is an honourable mention. And I think just because it doesn't get mentioned enough. It's, thematically a spin-off to Suburbia, but a very, very, very different game. You are kind of designing one of the hexes in Suburbia, but it is this beautiful, beautiful puzzle game where you are trying to lay paths that connect to outside roads to be able to score the tiles that they connect to. I did a playthrough, it's one of the very early playthroughs, so I hope it's not unbearable and slow and quiet and stuff. I did a solo playthrough for it right at the beginning of the channel. In fact, almost all of the playthroughs right at the start were solo playthroughs if you did just want those. And there's a playlist on the channel as well of only solo playthroughs. I should link that. That'd be helpful. But yeah, Subdivision is definitely worth your time, because also it is just a beat your own score one, after I've just said that I prefer other ones. But it comes with a load of scenarios as well, like you can have a river running through your hex to hold up your placement and stuff. It comes with a lot of extra ideas to throw into the solo mode as well. But it's just a beautiful, beautiful puzzly game overall. And yeah, that's why it's almost got on there. It's just an honourable mention there. And honourable mention is just a way of cheating, isn't it? It's a way of just saying top 10 because it's the convention and being able to talk about 13 things instead. But I'm sure we'll talk about more than 13. So on to the actual list. So number 10 is SOS Titanic. This is basically Patience, or Solitaire is probably more predominantly known now. Maybe it was always known like that in certain countries. My nan called it Patience. That's how I remember it. The Solitaire, where you are playing cards of alternate suits and trying to pull them off stacks and get them into neat, organised piles. In SOS Titanic, though, it takes that fundamental thing, puts us in the role of trying to save passengers from the sinking Titanic. The iceberg has just hit it as we start the game. So, it's a little bit different. It's custom decks rather than just being standard card decks that have got different numbers of passengers and things in there. The colours represent first class and second class passengers. And you play a character that is part of the crew of the Titanic that's got a special ability that allows them to bend the rules of the game. And you also end up with, unless you're playing one of the characters that doesn't let you have any, you have action cards as well that let you bend those rules a little bit as well, that change how you are able to draw cards from the deck, or let you reshuffle stacks so that you might get a chance of finding that card that you are desperate for. And fundamentally, it's still Patience at its core with these extra things on, in a similar way to, say, Augustus is Bingo, but with extra things added onto it. I think it works absolutely beautifully. I think it's wonderfully thematic. Every time you fail, you turn the page in this storybook and you can see the Titanic sink before your eyes. You can see your points sink before your eyes as well. But yeah, I think that it's really beautifully kind of encapsulates that kind of mad panic. As the ship sinks, the decks disappear, and so the stacks of cards end up shuffling into each other and getting ridiculously big if you're not doing that well, and muddling up what you've already managed to organise. I did a playthrough for that you can check out. But yes, absolutely love SOS Titanic, and in a kind of not really bittersweet way, I know that it's out of print, and it's been out of print since 4 years ago. I got it second hand from somewhere. It was out of print back then. Please, is it Ludovic that publishes it? Either reprint it or give it to a company that will reprint it. Do a Kickstarter, anything. I would like extra copies of this game. I know people that I would like to get this game for. So yeah, let me be able to do that, please. Print SOS Titanic again, because it's amazing. SOS Titanic, 10. Number 9 is Trois, which isn't built in with a solo mode. Maybe it is in its revised edition. It didn't used to be. The solo mode is actually designed by Shadi Tourbe, who is the designer of the Oni series of solo games. I think they can be played cooperatively with more players, but Honorim was one of those games always mentioned when I first started getting into board games of amazing solo games. There's Honorim, Sylvion, Castellon. Loads of games in that series now. He designed the solo variant for Trois, which you can, if your copy hasn't got that in it, then it's on Board Game Geek in the files section. This is probably my first experience of this kind of AI player. It's quite a simple AI, where Trois is this game where we are trying to rebuild the town of Trois, or maintain the town of Trois anyway, as it's constantly under siege from various calamities. We're trying to build a cathedral and stuff, and the core mechanism of Trois is that we each have a pool of dice, and on your turn you will form a set of dice of the same colour, add up your pips, divide it by a certain number based on the action, and that's how many times you get to do that action. But you can buy other people's dice in the game, which is a huge thing, because your amazing dice roll isn't necessarily a great thing for you, because it means that your dice are all going to get bought from underneath you probably. But on the other hand, that means you're going to get a load of money to be able to spend on getting other people's dice or doing other things. It's an absolutely amazing game. I did a 2-player playthrough of Trois, but the solo version is one of those AIs where Leroy is the AI in this, and you lay out his dice in a kind of ranked order of their number and their colour, and you roll some black dice on his turn. It's going to determine what action he takes, and it costs him usually a certain amount of dice, so you can see them diminish, and he'll use the best dice first. So it still gives you that experience of being able to buy someone else's dice, and it's that hallmark of a fairly simple AI. He's just going to do something not based on any strategy or anything that you're doing or anything really. He is just going to do something, probably doesn't need to pay for it, probably gets to bend the rules, probably gets a load of points for it. It's a really great example of that. It sits in my top 10 partly because of how much I love Trois, and yeah, it's definitely not that the feeling isn't mutual with Rachel for Trois, and so yeah, definitely the solo thing was a massive plus at the time. But it's I will say that it's in my limited experience, I've probably only played it about 4 or 5 times. A very, very, very tough AI opponent in my experience. I'm not sure that I managed to beat Leroy once. But anyway, that is Trois 9. Number 8 is Pandemic: The Cure. This is a dice game version of Pandemic. If you've seen me talk about it before, I absolutely love the Pandemic series. I think I've played everything but the Cthulhu one, and loved all of them, apart from weren't too hot on the Rome one, but everything else, the Legacy versions, the Iberia, Rising Tide, absolutely fantastic. Absolutely up for trying any version of Pandemic. And, being cooperative games, you can play them all solo, you can play them multi-handed and stuff, but Pandemic: The Cure is definitely the one that it was my go-to. It is one of those one more play games, especially solo when it's just you doing everything. It's so quick, and even if you fail, which often happened, I'll be honest, it's one of those things where it's so simple to just set this up for another game. And yeah, there were nights where I just ended up with just thinking, I'll just play this quickly and then go on to something else. No, the whole couple of hours or something ended up just being Pandemic: The Cure. You are, there are locations, it's abstracted more, it's not a great big map. There are these locations that are circles around. Have I done a playthrough for this? I don't think it's ever been requested or won a vote or anything. So maybe it'll get voted for after this. But yeah, there are kind of abstracted locations around the board, and they will fill up with dice. When dice of a certain number are rolled, they will end up in that location, and if too many dice of a certain colour go in there, they will trigger outbreaks and spread out into other locations and things, like in base Pandemic. But you are using your own custom dice. Every character in The Cure has their own set of custom dice with their own faces on it. Sometimes you've got special faces that are only available to you. Sometimes it's certain distributions of faces. You might be better at curing. You might be better at traveling around. But yeah, I think that it is definitely for that solo itch. It's always my go-to for Pandemic. And it is a great dice game version, a great fast version of Pandemic. And yeah, for just being able to set it up ultra quickly, play it through ultra quickly, and then desperately want to play it again and do it all over again. It's got some extras. It kind of does things in a different way. It's got the action cards from Pandemic, but you need to spend certain die faces to get them instead, which you will build up as dice come out. If they roll their plus face, they go into a little bank, and you can spend from that bank to get action cards to hopefully help you out. And as bad things happen, as the infection rate increases, more and more dice are going to come out. It's going to get more and more uncontrollable. There is a big expansion for it that's called Experimental Meds that I didn't get at the time because it was more expensive than the original game. But it does come with loads of extra dice and stuff. The price, it was after the price of board games kind of shot up from things that we won't mention. It does come with tons of extra dice and stuff, and I did pick it up on, is it Board Game Basement? It's to do with Games Law. It's their bargain website. It's £10 if you're in the UK and they've still got some copies. It was a bargain. I haven't played it yet, but yeah, looking forward to seeing what that adds to it. Maybe that'll get me back into a solo night. But Pandemic the Cure, I'm going on now. Number 7 is Forge War from designer Isaac Childress, who you may know as the designer of Juggernaut Gloomhaven. Just Gloomhaven, not Gloomhaven is a Juggernaut rather than Juggernaut Gloomhaven. That's what the expansion's called. This is it's nothing to do with it. This is his first game where you are we're not adventurers going off on quests. We're kind of the overseers, the people sending these heroes off, the financiers of these heroes. We are giving them the materials required. We're going to blacksmiths, getting weapons crafted and giving them to these heroes. And as they level up, they're going along these quest cards, getting rewards, getting money for us, hopefully. And it is just an enormous game. It's one of those games where it's got several different eras where quests get harder, equipment gets better, everything progresses through it. But if you try and play a full game of it, it's the most satisfying way to play it, definitely, to experience the evolution of everything. But it's a huge, huge, huge game to play. But it does come with speed-up variants where you can start in a later era if you haven't got the time. The solo game, would just be, playing it with the same kind of rules and just trying to beat your own score. But the solo mode adds a wrinkle in that you need to take a new quest every single round, which, in the normal game, you take one when you want one, when you feel that you are able to take another one. In the solo game, you have to take one, and you are not allowed to fail any quests. It's not what you want to do in the normal game, fail a quest, because you might still get some rewards out of it, but you wanted the great big reward at the end. That's why you took the quest. But in the solo game, it's game over if you let that happen. So it really changes the dynamic and piles the pressure onto you, even though you haven't got to compete with other players anymore that are going for designs before you or going for quests that maybe you desperately needed. You haven't got that anymore, but now you've got this pressure that not only do you need to keep up with everything, and it is, it's a great big complex long game. Not only do you need to keep up with everything that is going on there, you need to be able to keep piling on a new quest every round and be able to keep up with all of these things, because if you fail at any time, you lose. It's definitely one of those, where it's kind of the polar opposite of the experience of Pandemic the Cure, where it's just fast, furious, one more game. This is an all-nighter, and definitely one of those where you kind of head is in your hands, just thinking, I've lost, haven't I? I've lost. I haven't managed to do this. Oh, I can do this. I can keep myself going for one more round as I kind of circle the drain. But an absolutely fantastic experience that hasn't got a playthrough yet. I think it's one of those that almost won votes. But yeah, I tried to film it just before Gloomhaven came out, actually, when I still had more time to do things. And I remember I lost it embarrassingly quickly, maybe about an hour into it, and thought, yeah, I will do this again. I will throw away this filming and I will film it again and present people a much better playthrough. And now I wish that I'd just edited that and uploaded it, because I still haven't done it, and do not foresee time coming up where I'll have a chance to. But yeah, Forge War, I'm going on. It's fantastic. Number 6 is Town Centre from designer Alban Viard. And in this game, we basically draft cubes that represent different elements of our city. whether it's residential, commercial, retail. There is power to think of. There's elevators to think of, because there is a game from Alban called Card City, and I did a Kickstarter playthrough for Card City XL. Actually, you can watch that, where you are building a 2D city. And it grows by itself once certain requirements are met. Once there is enough residential around a commercial, it will automatically get another piece. It will expand into another card, and you are not allowed to place like next to like. You have to strategize so that the city will grow by itself. It's a really neat system. Town Centre takes that initial concept, turns all of the cards into little cubes, but now makes it 3D. So not only are you trying to build this grid just to start with, things can grow upwards and things can be placed upwards, and it's it can play, well, quite literally. Apologies for the pun, but quite literally adds a whole new dimension to it, because you just by changing the building to 3D, there is such a vast amount to think of, and for a fairly short game, it puts you through the ringer so much, trying to think of how to place these things effectively so that you will keep you have enough elevators so that you can keep building higher and higher, so that you place cubes so that other cubes will grow into them later and get you because the big points are in having these great big areas and having the tallest kind of tower, the tallest city you can get at the end of it. There's nothing else really like it. The only thing is Card City is the 2D kind of starting point for it, and there is a game called Clinic that I did a playthrough for, also from Alban, that takes the 3D building aspect but puts it into a hospital setting, and the main focus is trying to run this hospital. 3D building's still very much an important part of it, but it is everything to Town Centre, and I don't think there is anything quite like it, and it is such a brain-burning puzzle, but a very different one as well, and I just think it's absolutely fantastic. Number 5 is Project Elite from Artipia Games, although soon, I don't know if there's been delays or something, there's a new version coming out, isn't there? So you'll be able to get this, or maybe the older versions will get cheaper on the second-hand market now there's a new version coming out. But Project Elite is a real-time game where we are basically trying to stop we're trying to protect the Earth from the worst scum of the universe. There are hordes of aliens spawning constantly that are trying to rush into our base, and we need to stop that from happening while also trying to fulfill an objective, trying to destroy certain things that are out in the landmarks, or we're trying to escort things back. We are trying to grab things from out in there and bring them back to the base. There are different missions included in it. I actually did 3 different playthroughs of this. I think they were all solo playthroughs. They were some of the very first things that I ever did. And when I used to just keep going back to games when people really like that, I've got the time, I'll do another playthrough for that. How things have changed. Project, I really love real-time games, and Project Elite is in that vein of Escape Curse of the Temple, where you have a handful of dice and you're just constantly chucking them to try and get the result that you want, but inevitably there is a bad side of the dice that you don't want to come up, but will come up constantly. The negative side of the dice moves the aliens forward. They will move in their phase, a certain number based on what their stats are, but you rolling your dice to try and get what you need, you might be desperately trying to roll a gun to be able to kill more of the aliens, but inevitably you will be moving them away and maybe moving them out of your line of sight. You do get to choose which ones move, and that's part of the strategy of it. But just an amazing, another fast frenzied game. And it's a cooperative game. It's not a huge amount of changes just for solo. It is just one of those ones that I've played a ton just because I love the game so much. And in the solo thing, it's a simultaneous real time game. So it's a very similar experience because you have the main thing that changes is that other players are getting in your way in the multiplayer game because when they're rolling their monster movement things, they're trying to work out what's monster to move, and while you can offer advice and shout don't move that one, it's a real time game. There's chaos. Everybody is moving all the stuff. It gives you more you've got kind of more control in the solo game at the cost of just being one person trying to run around that map and get everything done themselves. So yeah, that's Project Elite. Number 4 is Fuse. It's also in my top 10 of all time, I believe. Maybe all of these are. 2 of them, maybe. Anyway, that's beside the point. Fuse is another real-time game, another co-op game, where you are trying to... You've got 10 minutes. That's how long the game is going to take at most. It's another one of those games where it's just... in solo and playing with Rachel, it's ended up times where, like, yeah, we'll just play Fuse and then we'll play something else, or we've only got, half an hour before we do something, let's play a game of Fuse, and it inevitably ends up playing a ton of games of it. It's been quite a while since we've played it now. Need to get that out again. But yeah, Fuse, you are trying to defuse bombs, basically. A spaceship has been riddled with bombs. We have this deck of cards that represent them, and we have dice that we draw from a bag and roll, and you need to assign those dice to these bomb cards. And if you can't place enough dice in the round, then you need to remove previously placed dice and put them back in the bag. And you need to complete as many of the cards as you can, basically the whole stack, before the 10 minutes runs out. And how quickly you go is all down to you. And that's what kind of forces you to end up making bad decisions because you feel the pressure of the time. It's got an app like a lot of Renegade Games apps have got. It's got an app that is basically just a 10-minute timer, but it keeps your score in as well, helps you work out your score. But the music and the sound effects and the announcer, as frustrating as she can be while you know that you're going to lose the game and she tells you that you need to go faster and stuff. It all adds to the atmosphere of it. And yeah, there is not. It helps that it's quite a short game, but there isn't a game we've played more than Fuse. It is still an absolute favourite for us, and yeah, stands out whenever we are thinking of just filler games, and definitely when I'm thinking of solo games, I think of all of the time that I spent furiously rolling dice in Fuse. So that's why it's number 4. I should have written numbers next to these. Number 3 is A Feast for Odin from designer Uwe Rosenberg. And I thought one of the things I should restrict the list to that I didn't mention at the start is only have one game per designer, not have a top 10 full of a certain designer who I haven't mentioned yet, and have a load of Uwe Rosenberg games because Agricola is great that you can play it solo. It is just beat your own score though, and just play by yourself. There's a little campaign thing going through it where you can keep a card from a previous game and stuff. Why can't I think of it? At the Gates of Loyang, I had to look behind me, has a really nice grid system where you have to pick your cards from rather than this back and forth between players. In the solo, you're restricted to this grid that affects the cost of the cards. That works beautifully as well. And they all have solo modes in their different ways. But A Feast for Odin, while it is one of those games that I said that I prefer to others. It is basically beat your own score by the end of it. But Feast for Odin is this enormous worker placement game. It's kind of, in some ways you can imagine that a picture of the player board would be the parody of a worker placement game. There is just this huge grid of 4 columns and so many rows of all of these actions. It is crazy at first. When you actually get into it, you see that actually they follow a theme, and certain things along the columns are just more powerful versions of previous actions, or they're all grouped into, getting more food, into converting tiles. There is, a production chain of making tiles worth more and more, and once they are a certain colour, they can go on your player board. There is, there's this huge worker placement element to it. There is a bit of that there are, occupation cards that will give you special abilities or more point scoring throughout the game. There is a polyomino element to the game where all of these tiles that you were getting can be placed on your player board, and the extra island boards that you can get throughout the game to cover up negative points and surround bonuses. So you will get more and more stuff as income throughout the game. So there is so much, especially with the Norwegians expansion as well. There is so many different cards, different islands, different worker placement spots to go to that I think you could potentially have so many different strategies going on there to keep you going, to make these solo games feel so different every time. But on top of that, and this isn't really the game strength. This is the community strength that on Board Game Geek, I believe it's still ongoing, not quite as frequently as it was when the game first came out. There is a solo challenge series where users will present you with, these are the occupation cards that you start with, or these are the restrictions for your particular scenario. That's, if even though you have all of these options, if you find a really nice strategy that you enjoy, you will, especially solo, you'll fall into that, and you'll probably end up, repeating yourself. And even if you force yourself to do something differently early on, you might find yourself falling back into those older ways. With these community challenges, every game was drastically different. I did the first, it might have been 7 or 8. When Feast for Odin came out, I played it constantly. I played it so much solo because I enjoyed it so much. I'd gotten, the setup down, even though it was this huge thing to set up, I got it down so quickly because I'd done it so much. And yeah, I absolutely loved the solo challenges. That is kind of an extra to the game that was added by users, and, seeing all of these different ways that people had gone about it and seeing their scores and things. It was a great thread to be a part of. And as I say, I think that is still going. You can still check that out on the Board Game Geek page for Feast for Odin as well, the forums for it. But yeah, an absolutely fantastic game that I love anyway. But with the addition of all of those solo challenges, it made it such a fantastic solo experience. That's Feast for Odin, number 3. Number 2 is The Gallerist by designer Vital Lacerda. And yeah, this is partly the Uwe Rosenberg, and I could put Gloomhaven on here, although I only ever played Gloomhaven 2-player really, apart from the solo scenarios. Yeah, I could put loads of different games by the same designers. I think every Vital Lacerda game has got a solo mode now, apart from Kanban. Kanban's got a user generated solo mode that I did. I think I've done I did a 2-player playthrough for the prototype of Escape Plan, but I think other than that, I've got solo variants for all the Vital Lacerda games, if you are curious. The Kanban one was a user one, though. Dale Bonacore did that. Remember that name? Yep. So I can't remember rules to certain games that I played loads, but I remember that Dale Bonacore made that solo variant. But yeah, the Gallerist is still my absolute favourite. I think it came out the same year as A Feast for Odin, or I got it that same year anyway, and that was a similar thing of, I played it so much. I've played the Gallerist. I've printed out a special score sheet to more easily track your score in it. I've played it for about a week, maybe even longer, just once a night. Just set up Gallerist, play through this amazing solo mode. And so they work quite differently. In Vinos, it's a worker placement game, and you've got cards that are determining where the AI is going to go, and they get to break the rules and things. And that works in a similar way to On Mars. That's it's not a grid of worker placement, but it decides what action they're going to take, and they've got different rules. They're all effective solo variants, and they work quite differently. The Gallerist, I don't believe any of the others work in this way. That the Gallerist, the AI player, who's always Lacerda, by the way, he's always named Lacerda, the AI player isn't actually doing anything apart from taking certain tiles away from the marketing section. The AI player is just there to get in your way, really, which they often are. But there are 4 actions placement spots in the Gallerist. We're running art galleries. We're trying to discover new artists, buy art from them, promote them, make them famous so that the paintings are now worth money. We are trying to fulfill, curator cards and salesman cards by selling the right art and having the right art in our gallery. All of Vital Lacerda games are these beautifully complex, very thematic experiences where everything's kind of this action loop where everything seemingly relates to everything else, and there are usually several different ways to go about achieving what you want to do in a given turn. It's not just as simple as just do this one action. There's usually a lot of ways to go about, getting an artist to the next level, for example. But the Gallerist is still, I think Kanban's still higher, but the Gallerist is probably my second favourite Lacerda game. But for solo, there are 4 different action spaces that you go to. And then there is a myriad of choices once you have gone there, of course. But all Lacerda does on his turn is move clockwise, kick you out if you're in the space. That's an important part of the Gallerist. Being kicked out allows you to get kicked out actions that are a really big way of getting extra things done. And leaves his things behind so that you can kick him out, and whenever you kick him out, he gets rid of tickets. And tickets are a timer for the game. And so while you are not directly competing against him in terms of score or his artworks and stuff, and you know, it's making the game harder effectively because all of these artists you want to promote, you're doing it all by yourself. So yeah, it's another kind of layer of pressure by trying to get a lot done just by yourself. So I like having, you know, even though I do enjoy the games where you are trying to compete against the AI in some way, I really like that you just know what he is going to do. You know he's going to go clockwise to the next space. You can plan whether he's going to kick you out and what you are going to do with that kicked out action, whereas in the multiplayer game, they can go to any of the 4 spaces. You can hope that they're going to kick you out, but you can plan for it here, which, you know, I've definitely seen. You know, some people don't like that. Some people don't like that knowledge, but I really love that he is predictable, and you can get a sense for what he is going to do, and try and make the most from forcing him to give you these actions to try and keep your influence at the right level, so you'll have. So you'll not be spending too much to keep taking these actions, and that you will keep having enough influence to be able to have all of these bonus actions, and so that maybe you don't kick him out quite so much and accelerate the ending of the game too much. I absolutely love the game. I'm pretty sure the playthrough for this is the solo variant of it. See why there. I haven't got it across enough here. I love all of his games to different degrees, but yeah, the Gallerist is right up there. But in terms of solo, we'll see when Kanban is coming back to Kickstarter. Well, it's coming to Kickstarter. It never was in the first place. Going to Kickstarter with its electric vehicles version, and it's going to be Eagle Griffin and all deluxeified and everything. So yeah, I assume that's going to come with one of Vital's solo variants. So we'll see when that comes out. The jury's still out, but for now, the Gallerist is the absolute best of his games, and yeah, it's one of my favourite designers. So yeah, it was going to be up there. I keep saying yep, as if I'm going to stop speaking, but then I speak more. That was the Gallerist, number 2. So what's better than the Gallerist for solo? Okay, so number 1. This is, well, not really a cheat. I didn't say that I still owned all of the games because, yeah, I haven't got the Gaia Project anymore. I mentioned that. This, though, is still, I feel, yeah, still the best experience I have had solo, whilst at the same time, we did end up just moving the game on. Number 1 is Mage Knight. And, yeah, while, you know, I'll get out the thing up front. The reason that we got rid of it was just because, you know, I'm always doing this all of the time. I'm always, you know, filming more games, learning new games, don't get so much time to go back to older games. And when we did go back to older games, the ones like Mage Knight, where there is quite a big rules overhead and there are a lot of finicky little things to remember, I just found that whenever I went back to it, I was having to learn it from scratch. And yeah, it just didn't work out. But having said that up front, having been down on it right at the start, this is from Vlaada Chvátil, who designed Dungeon Pets and Dungeon Lords and code names and all sorts of these weird and wonderful, very, very different experiences. Mage Knight is kind of the pinnacle of this. You know, it's so. The theme of it is just that you are, you know, it's this fantasy theme, this dark fantasy theme. You are this adventurer. You are trying to kill monsters. You are trying to buy new cards from various locations that are out on the board. But everything that you do is from your hand of cards. You will have cards that allow you to do combat, that allow you to move around. Every card, of course, has extra uses. You can turn the card on its side to always be able to move a small amount or attack for a small amount. So in giving you these options, in having your hand of cards, in seeing which of the magic crystal colours are available for you to boost certain cards, in knowing that you could turn any card if you want to forego its really powerful ability, if you want to forgo that and just use it for some movement because you desperately need some, it makes absolutely every part of the game this, you know, deliciously complex. It hung across how yeah, I've talked about some games being kind of head in your hands and just thinking for so long about your turn. Mage Knight is the king of that. Hugely, hugely long game. Works very well co-op as well, even though it takes more time. But every single thing you do in this game is such a beautiful, complex puzzle because, like so many games that I like, there are so many different ways of trying to achieve what you need to. But there isn't anything quite like Mage Knight for making everything seem like it is possible to you if only you could think hard enough. If only you could come up with the right answer, then you could do what you want to. You could make it to that monster and kill it this round. You could make it to this thing and buy this card that you are desperate for. Everything just seems so close yet so far. And those times when you make it work, which is quite often, you might need to spend ages working it out, and you might end up with nothing and have to take a turn that you didn't quite want to. But there are plenty of times in the game where you have thought all of these ways around it, and maybe you're just about to give up, and then suddenly it occurs to you the weird way around that you can achieve exactly what you wanted to. The way I'm rocking backwards and forwards about it, but that it is full of those moments that are just so immensely satisfying, and are throughout pretty much all of these games. To a lesser extent, I just feel like it is all amplified in Mage Knight. The complexity is certainly amplified. The stuff you need to remember is the playtime is definitely amplified, and just how frazzled you'll feel during and after playing it is certainly amplified. But I think the satisfaction and the beauty of this game are just right up there. I didn't talk about it at all in my top 50 because that was just games that I have. But so many times in the last, has it been a couple of years since we sold it? It happens fairly often where I think I'd really like to try Mage Knight again. Should I get Mage Knight again? And ultimately, some things ended up getting in the way of that. It's so tempting when there's that Ultimate Edition as well that's got all of the expansions in there. I never played it with any expansions. I never felt like I got a good enough handle on the base game. But that was because, we'd learn it, practice it, play it, maybe once or twice in a couple of months, and then it would, we wouldn't play it again for 6 months or even longer, and then going back to it, you have to start again, which is, it's a feat learning the game effectively, and with a board game, you never know that you're getting it all right. I will say that Ricky Royal, mentioning people, Ricky Royal and Paul Grogan, I know that it's their favourite game of all time. And I can definitely see why. But Ricky Royal's tutorial series absolutely taught me Mage Knight. I would be absolutely nowhere without those videos. So thanks, Ricky. I wouldn't have been able to play without you. But where was I going with this? But it's got expansions designed by Paul Grogan as well that I haven't played. Maybe one day, WizKids, would you like a bumbling, mistake-filled playthrough of Mage Knight? Maybe it'll happen. Maybe I will do a great big playthrough of it. Although I think after the fumbling and bumbling that happened towards the end of On Mars, then I can't imagine the chaos that Mage Knight would descend into, and the surely legion of people that are devoted to Mage Knight and know exactly where I'm going wrong. But then they can put the video right and it'll be perfect. Hey, maybe it'll happen one day. I don't know. But Mage Knight I would still put up there, even though it's been a couple of years since I have played it, and probably over the whole years that we had it, probably didn't rack up that many plays of it, probably 5 or so. It still sticks in there as, there is absolutely nothing quite like Mage Knight. There are things that evoke a similar thematic feel, and I was thinking, the world is probably a lot more bleak and dead in something like Tainted Grail, but there is absolutely nothing that comes close to that kind of gameplay. And really, there because of that, there is nothing that matches the kind of stress and agony and then pure elation when you manage to figure out how you are going to do something. And I think that really elevates Mage Knight above everything else in terms of solo anyway. So, that was a top 10. I hope that made sense. I hope that intrigued you about some games or affirmed your opinions about others. But yeah, there'll be more top 10s more regularly from now on. If you would like to have a say in which ones happen, then it's patreon.com/slickerdrips and you can vote on them. And you also get to vote on playthroughs every month and you can get involved. You get to see playthroughs early and we can have a nice chat and stuff. I very much appreciate your support. I'll see you for the next playthrough or top 10. Bye everyone.